Today, we're digging into something that's a really big deal in the world of business and human rights, the UN's guiding principles. You can think of it as a global blueprint, a kind of instruction manual that clarifies who's supposed to do what when commerce and human dignity overlap. All right, let's get into it. And this is really the core question, isn't it? I mean, think about the phone in your hand. It was probably designed in one country, with minerals mined in another, and then pieced together in a third. It creates this accountability vacuum. If something goes wrong somewhere in that chain, who's on the hook? That's the exact problem these guiding principles were created to solve. So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll talk more about that accountability gap. Then we'll get into the brilliant three-pillar framework they came up with to fix it. We'll unpack each of those pillars, and finally, we'll talk about who this actually applies to. And let me tell you, the answer might surprise you. Okay, so let's start with the why. Why was this blueprint even necessary in the first place? Well, it all comes down to what experts call the global accountability gap. The reality of our modern world is that a company can be based in a country with super strong laws, but have factories or suppliers in places where the government just can't or maybe won't enforce those same standards. And it's this gap, the gap between the global reach of a business and the local reach of the law, where human rights abuses can just fall right through the cracks. So to deal with this, the United Nations didn't just, write another dusty report. They created a really authoritative, globally endorsed framework for action. It's a practical guide for governments and companies alike. And here it is. This is the heart of the whole thing, the Protect, Respect, and Remedy framework. People often call it a three-legged stool, and it's a great metaphor because if you take away any one of those legs, protect, respect, or remedy, the whole system just collapses. Every single part is absolutely crucial. And this quote right here really drives home a key point. This is not a menu of options where you can pick and choose. The principles are designed to work together as one complete system. And the goal isn't just theory, it's about making a real, tangible difference for people on the ground. All right, so let's pull back the curtain and get into the nitty-gritty of what each of these pillars actually means. We're going to look at the specific roles and responsibilities that make this whole framework tick. So pillar number 1, this puts the foundational responsibilities squarely on the shoulders of governments. The state duty to protect basically says that countries already have an obligation to make sure that businesses operating on their turf are not harming people. So how do they do that? Well, it's not enough to just pass some laws and call it a day. It's about enforcing them. It means they have to regularly check if those laws are actually working, close any loopholes they find, and, this is key, actively step in to prevent, investigate, and punish abuse when it happens. It's an active, ongoing job. At the end of the day, the government's job is to build the whole playing field, the laws, the regulations, the policies that creates an environment where business can succeed, but never at the cost of human rights. Now let's move to the second pillar, which shifts the spotlight directly onto companies. The corporate responsibility to respect is a global standard for how all businesses are expected to act. The two key phrases here are avoid infringing and address impacts. So what does that look like in the real world? It starts with a public promise, sure, but it demands action. It means doing something called human rights due diligence, which is a fancy way of saying companies have to proactively look for and fix potential problems in everything they do. And here's the kicker. This responsibility exists whether the local government is doing its job or not. This is so important. A company can't just throw up its hands and say, hey, we followed the local law. The responsibility to respect human rights is a higher standard. It's about doing the right thing everywhere, all the time, no matter what the bare minimum legal requirement might be. So what happens when, even with the best intentions, things go wrong? Well, that brings us to the third and final pillar, access to remedy. This is the part that ensures the whole framework actually has teeth. It means that when someone's rights are violated, there has to be a way to make it right. This is all about justice for the people who've been harmed. It means there need to be clear, accessible ways, whether it's through the courts or maybe a company's own complaint system, for them to be heard and get a fair resolution. Without remedy, let's be honest, rights are just words on a page. Okay, now that we've got the three pillars down, let's be crystal clear about who this blueprint is actually for, because the scope is one of the most powerful things about these principles. And the answer is incredibly simple and sweeping. These principles apply to everyone, every single country, and every single business, period. There are no get-out-of-jail-free cards based on your size, your industry, or where you're located. So yeah, it doesn't matter if you're a gigantic multinational corporation building skyscrapers or a small family-owned workshop down the street. The fundamental responsibility is exactly the same. And it cuts across every single sector you can think of. Whether you're growing food or making steel, the guiding principles set a universal standard of conduct. As the document itself says, it applies regardless of their size, sector, location, ownership, and structure. Now, it's really important to be clear about what these guiding principles are and what they are not. They are a global standard, a baseline for behavior. What they are not is a new international law or treaty. They don't create new obligations, they just clarify existing ones. They're not an optional menu, they're a complete package. And they don't just apply to giant companies, they apply to all of them. So look, if you take away nothing else from this, remember this one sentence. It's the whole framework in a nutshell. States have a duty to protect human rights. Businesses have a responsibility to respect human rights. And when things go wrong, there must be access to remedy. Protect, respect, remedy. That's the formula. The guiding principles give us this amazing, authoritative blueprint for how governments and companies should act. We have the plans, we have the shared language. The big question for all of us now is, how do we make sure this blueprint is actually used to build a global economy that truly works for everyone?